Have you ever noticed how, like some cities or companies or even schools can just effortlessly adapt to massive crises while others completely collapse under their own weight?
Yeah, it's pretty staggering when you really look at it.
Right. And the crazy part is, if you look at their mission statements, they both use the exact same inspirational buzzwords.
Oh, exactly. Excellence,
Think
integrity.
innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah. They both claim to value all of that, yet one thrives and the other just crumbles. So today we are looking at the actual architectural blueprint of why that happens. We are ripping apart a concept called the Diamond Framework, specifically looking at Chapter 9 of our sources today, to prove that resilience has absolutely nothing to do with good intentions.
No, not at all. It's entirely about having the right structural processes.
Exactly. We're going to explore how this acts as a 3D operating system. We're taking a deep dive into case studies, moving from water management in Singapore to urban transport in Brazil.
And we're also going to look at some cautionary tales, right?
Oh, yes. One spectacular cautionary tale where an entire city's system just completely collapses into what our sources call performative governance.
That is a brutal case study.
It really is. So if you've ever felt frustrated by a broken bureaucracy at work or, in your local government, consider this deep dive your shortcut to understanding exactly why it's failing and, well, how it could actually be fixed.
I mean, it is the ultimate paradox of modern institutions, isn't it?
How so?
Well, we are just drowning in the language of morality and competence, but we're starving for the actual execution of it.
Yeah, that's so true.
Which is a really tough pill to swallow for a lot of leaders. We love to think that if we just, hire good people and tell them to do good things, the system will just magically work.
Right, like good vibes are enough.
Exactly.
Mm-mm.
But the sources we are looking at today, they make a very rigorous, almost mathematically precise argument. Competence cannot just be demanded. It has to be structurally generated.
Structurally generated. Okay, let's test that theory. Because before we look at the specific cities and companies, we need to understand the machine we are actually looking at. Right, the blueprint itself. Yeah. The sources introduce this diamond framework, but they're very careful to say it is not a flat 2D checklist that you just, tick off on a whiteboard in a boardroom.
No, definitely not.
They call it a 3D operating system built from the inside out. What does that actually mean?
So the inside-out concept is really the engine block of this entire theory. Imagine a core.
Okay, I'm picturing a core.
That core is an 8-stage, clockwise process cycle. It starts with task.
Meaning defining what you're going to do.
Exactly. Defining the task. Then it moves to plan, which is allocating the resources.
Right.
Then develop, which is building the capacity to actually do the thing. Then implement.
The actual execution of it.
Yes, the doing.
Yeah.
Then assess, measuring what just happened. Reflect, asking why it happened. Learn, which is internalizing that feedback.
Okay, that's 7.
And finally, the 8th stage is character, which is the identity you form through that entire process. And then, the cycle just starts all over again.
Wait, hold on. I need to stop you there because you just threw a lot of abstract concepts at me. I want to zero in on that last step. Character. You're saying character is a step in a process because I've always thought of character as like a moral trait you're born with or a virtue.
Right.
How is it a mechanical step in an operating system?
See, that is the pivotal shift in thinking the sources are demanding here. We usually treat character as the input.
Yeah, we say if we have a leader with good character, we will get good results.
Exactly. But the Diamond Framework argues the exact opposite. Character is the output of the cycle.
The output, wow.
Yeah. If an institution consistently defines a clear task, implements it, assesses it honestly, and learns from its mistakes, the resulting identity of that institution is its character.
So a culture of reliability isn't just a poster on the wall in the break room?
No, it is the physical residue of a functioning feedback loop.
That completely flips the script. You don't bring character to the system builds the character.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm with you on the 8-stage core. Task, plan, develop, implement, assess, reflect, learn, character. But you mentioned earlier this is 3D.
Yes, 3-dimensional.
How does a simple circle of 8 steps become 3-dimensional?
So that 8-stage core anchors 4 distinct societal spheres. The sources describe these spheres as functional triads.
Triads, meaning groups of 3.
Right. They literally interlock with the 8-stage cycle to create a 3-dimensional structure. The output of one sphere becomes the literal input of the next.
Let's break down those 4 triads slowly so we don't lose anyone. The first one is the politics triad.
Yes.
And I want to clarify for everyone listening right now, the sources define politics here not as, left-wing versus right-wing or who is winning a midterm election.
No, not partisan politics.
They define it fundamentally as who we are and what we aim to do.
Precisely. So the politics triad is anchored by 3 stages from the core cycle: task, planning, and character.
Task, planning, character. Okay.
It defines the goal, the intention of how to reach it, and the identity that guides it all. That is the realm of politics in its purest structural sense. It's the sphere of intention.
Okay, so if politics is the intention, then the next triad, the economics triad, has to be the mechanism to get there.
Exactly.
It's anchored by planning, development, and implementation. It's all about resourcing and building the actual capacity to act.
Right. If politics is the why, economics is the how. You take the plan from the political sphere, you develop the human and physical capital, and you implement it.
So you don't just, say you want a healthier city.
No, you secure the funding, you train the nurses, and you physically break ground on the new hospital.
Which feeds perfectly into the third sphere, which is honestly where things usually seem to fall apart in the real world.
The physical environment triad.
Right. Anchored by implementation, assessment, and reflection. This is where the action actually meets reality.
It is the ultimate testing ground. Because, you can debate your task in the politics triad all you want.
Right. You can hold town halls forever.
And you can fund it beautifully in the economics triad. But the physical environment triad is where you find out if the pipes actually hold water under pressure.
Literally or metaphorically.
Exactly. You implement, you assess the physical results with hard data, and you reflect on those metrics. The physical environment does not care about your intentions.
It just gives you undeniable feedback.
Yes. And then that feedback has to go somewhere, which brings us to the fourth and final sphere.
The social triad.
Right. Anchored by reflection, learn, and character. This is how society internalizes what just happened.
The collective psychology of the community, basically.
Yeah, we reflect on what happened in the physical environment, we extract lessons from it, and over time, those lessons shape our societal character.
So if the hospital gets built and works, we trust the system.
Exactly. Do we become a high-trust society because our systems work and keep their promises? Or do we become a cynical society because our systems constantly fail and lie about it?
Oh, that makes so much sense.
And then, crucial to the whole model, that character feeds right back into the politics triad to define the very next task. It's a continuous closed loop.
I want to use a mechanical analogy here to make sure I'm visualizing this correctly, and for you listening to visualize it too.
Go for it.
If you think of an institution, like a city, a company, whatever, as an engine, that 8-stage cycle is the drive shaft right in the middle.
Okay, I like that.
The 4 spheres, politics, economics, physical environment, social, they are the gears surrounding it. If the drive shaft isn't turning from the inside out, if the cycle is broken, the gears just grind against each other.
That is exactly what happens. And when they grind, the friction basically destroys the system.
And the sources give a very specific name to this state of systemic friction, don't they?
Yes, they call it the legacy gray diamond. It represents a hollowing out phase of an institution.
A hollowing out. The sources describe the gray diamond as a collapse cascade. Walk me through what that cascade actually looks like in practice.
It's a sequence of institutional failure. It usually starts in the politics triad with anxiety.
Anxiety, okay.
Leaders realize the cycle is broken, they don't know how to fix the core task, so they panic and protect their own positions. They become obsessed with optics over substance.
Which means they stop making hard decisions.
Exactly. Which bleeds into the economics triad as avoidance.
Avoidance.
The bureaucracy just freezes up. Middle managers refuse to sign off on necessary changes. They defer maintenance. They hide behind red tape. They avoid implementation entirely because implementation carries risk.
I mean, if you are listening to this right now and thinking about that one department head at your job who requires 7 signatures for a basic software update just to cover their own tracks, that's avoidance.
It is.
That is the gray diamond sitting right there in your office.
And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
Because of that avoidance, the system eventually fails in the real world. That hits the physical environment triad as accusation.
The blame game.
Oh, big time. The bridge collapses, or the power grid fails in a winter storm, or the company product gets recalled, and suddenly everyone is pointing fingers.
The politicians blame the contractors.
The contractors blame the budget.
The citizens blame everyone.
Exactly. And finally, that continuous culture of accusation seeps into the social sphere as apathy.
The public just gives up.
They do. They lower their expectations to the floor. They assume nothing will ever work, so they just stop participating. That is the gray diamond. The gears are grinding, generating a ton of noise, but zero forward motion.
Man, that is a bleak but highly accurate picture of a lot of places. So, the ultimate goal, the thesis of these sources, is how to transition a failing institution from that gray diamond to the functional renewal of the red diamond.
Yes, the red diamond.
And the red diamond is driven by 4 structural dimensions, right? Awareness, anticipation, accountability, and adaptability.
Exactly. It's the shift from a culture of reacting to a culture of anticipating.
But the catch is, you cannot just declare that you are now a red diamond organization. No, you can't just send out a company-wide memo mandating accountability.
Right. You have to structurally rebuild the 8-stage cycle. Okay, let's take this theoretical blueprint and look at how it operates in the real world. Let's look at Chapter 9's case studies.
Let's do it.
Specifically, a municipality from the text called Greenhaven. How does a city actually transition out of the gray diamond?
Greenhaven is the quintessential mid-sized city trapped in decay. Before they applied the framework, their reality was just rising service delays, crumbling infrastructure, and massive public distrust.
Citizens hated the local government because nothing ever got fixed on time.
Exactly. But the defining characteristic of Greenhaven was that they had abundant moral language.
The buzzwords.
The buzzwords. If you read their city charter, it was beautiful. They had these massive, glossy, strategic documents about building a sustainable, equitable future for all residents.
But the potholes weren't getting filled.
Right. And the garbage wasn't getting picked up consistently. So they were textbook gray diamond. Avoidance in the bureaucracy, accusation in the physical environment, apathy in the social sphere. So how do they actually fix it?
They stopped focusing on the buzzwords and completely rebuilt the drive shaft.
Starting where?
They started with the task phase. Instead of vague, unmeasurable aspirations, they defined 4 absolutely clear, grounded tasks.
Like what?
Things like reliable water delivery, efficient waste removal, baseline transport maintenance, and administrative competence.
And they took their 200-page, beautifully bound strategic document and literally threw it in the trash, didn't they?
They tossed it. They replaced it with a 12-page operational plan. Just timelines, roles, budgets, and clear criteria for success.
The sources point out that any citizen could read the entire functioning plan of the city in 20 minutes.
That is the shift from the gray diamond's obfuscation to the red diamond's awareness. But the most critical mechanical change they made was in their assess and reflect stages.
Okay, how so?
They abolished their traditional quarterly review meetings, and they instituted weekly 90-minute review cycles.
See, let me push back on this, because I am trying to put myself in the shoes of a city employee in Greenhaven.
Okay.
If I'm an overworked, underpaid public works employee in a decaying municipality, and some consultant tells me we're now having weekly 90-minute reviews across departments, that sounds like a fresh circle of hell.
Oh, sure.
That sounds like more bureaucracy, not less.
That is a completely rational reaction if you are trapped in a gray diamond mindset, because you are used to reviews being weapons.
Like used to punish people.
Yes. In a broken system, a quarterly reporting meeting is just bureaucracy. It's a room full of people justifying their existence, hiding their mistakes, and trying not to get fired.
Right. Lots of PowerPoint slides explaining why nothing got done.
Exactly. But the sources differentiate that kind of meeting from a red diamond feedback loop.
So what's the difference in the room? When they sit down for that 90 minutes, what actually happens?
In Greenhaven's new 90-minute weekly reviews, they structurally limited the conversation. They only asked 3 things.
Yes, 3.
3 things. What was delivered this week, what didn't work, and what needs correction right now.
Wow, so no time for grandstanding.
No time for posturing at all. It shifted the entire culture from punishing failure, which, remember, causes avoidance, to flagging errors early, which breeds adaptability.
That makes a lot of sense.
By doing it weekly, a delayed asphalt shipment was caught in 3 days instead of 3 months when the road was already half destroyed by weather.
The sources introduce a concept here that explains why this works mathematically. They call it the opposites as criteria theory. Can you explain the mechanics of that?
Sure. If you visualize the 8-stage cycle as a clock face, certain stages sit directly opposite each other.
Okay, picturing a clock.
Task, which is at the beginning, sits directly across from assessment. The theory dictates that whatever you define as your task must naturally generate the exact criteria for your assessment.
So they have to be a perfect mirror of each other.
Yes. If your task is vague, say your task is be an excellent city department, your assessment will be fuzzy.
Right, because how do you measure excellence?
You can't. So incompetence has a massive gray area to hide in. But if your task is reduce non-revenue water loss by 25% in 24 months, your assessment is purely metered baseline data.
There are no hiding places.
Exactly. The task literally dictates the math of the assessment.
And because Greenhaven eliminated those hiding places, the results were just staggering.
They really were.
They saw 41% faster repairs, 33% cost savings across departments, and a massive, measurable improvement in resident trust.
They even started publishing annual What We Learned reports.
Which is so rare for a government to do.
Very rare. They didn't just list their wins, they publicly listed 3 major failures from the year and exactly how they were changing the plan to fix them.
It's stunningly simple, but structurally profound.
And we see the exact same structural fix in the private sector case study. A manufacturing company, the sources call Ardenworks.
Right, Ardenworks. They were suffering from the same disease, just in a corporate context.
Yes, Ardenworks is fascinating because they were a victim of slogan governance.
They had those signs on the wall saying, be excellent and quality first.
But their actual internal incentives, the way they assessed their floor managers, rewarded raw speed over accuracy.
Ah, so they wanted quality, but they paid for speed.
Exactly. So they had sky-high waste, terrible defect rates, and a lot of staff burnout. They were trying to motivate their way out of a structural contradiction.
Right. The political triad said quality, but the economics triad funded speed.
The gears were grinding. So they applied the diamond. They started by fixing the task. They replaced the slogans with concrete deliverables.
Okay.
But the real game changer was how they fixed development and implementation. They instituted what the sources call implementation gates.
What does an implementation gate actually look like on a factory floor?
It's a physical or structural barrier to moving forward. In a gray diamond factory, if a part is slightly out of spec, a worker might just pass it down the line anyway to meet their speed quota, hoping someone else catches it later.
Right. Avoidance.
Exactly. An implementation gate removes that choice entirely. It might be a physical jig that the part must fit into, or a software lock that requires a quality scan before the conveyor belt even moves.
Oh, wow. So you literally cannot move to the next step if the quality isn't there.
Right. It forces the assessment stage to happen during implementation rather than after the product is already completely ruined.
And they combined those gates with weekly reflection cycles, just like Greenhaven did.
Which was crucial for Ardenworks because they had an aging workforce, they had retiring experts leaving the company and taking decades of tacit, unwritten knowledge with them.
That's a huge problem in manufacturing right now.
Massive. But by creating these weekly learning stages, they captured that knowledge. They asked the veterans, why did you adjust the machine that way? And then codified it into the plan.
And the results speak for the structure itself. Defect rates dropped 62%, material waste was reduced by 37%, and employee retention improved by 28%.
Both Greenhaven and Ardenworks suffered from a massive gap between what they said they wanted and what they actually did. By tightening the cycle, they forced the organization to face its own physical reality.
So Greenhaven fixed a pothole problem, and Ardenworks fixed a manufacturing defect. But repairing a broken city or a broken assembly line is one thing. They were fixing problems that were already happening.
Right.
How does this framework handle a problem that literally doesn't exist yet? If the diamond relies so heavily on assessing physical reality, what happens when you have to plan for a reality 50 years down the road?
This brings us to the red diamond dimension of anticipation. How do you govern for conditions that haven't even occurred?
Let's talk about Singapore. The sources highlight Singapore's water management as an absolute masterclass in anticipatory governance.
It really is.
To understand the stakes here, you have to know Singapore faced an existential physical threat. They are a densely populated island nation with a severe lack of natural fresh water.
Historically, they relied heavily on importing water from Malaysia.
Right, and from a geopolitical standpoint, that is a vulnerability that keeps leaders awake at night.
It is the ultimate recipe for gray diamond anxiety. But Singapore didn't panic, and they didn't rely on wishful thinking. They built a massive anticipatory cycle.
Starting where?
They started in the politics triad by defining a 50-year task and plan. The goal was total water independence.
50 years! That's incredible foresight.
But they didn't just write a 50-year report and hope for the best. They continuously invested heavy capital into local engineering to build out their economics triad.
And the way they handled the implementation stage is what I find so brilliant. They didn't just build one massive dam and pray it never cracked.
No, they deployed multiple sourcing technologies in parallel. They called it the 4 national taps.
The 4 national taps, I love that branding. What were they?
So they used imported water as a baseline. They maximized local catchments and reservoirs. They built highly advanced desalination plants. And they pioneered a massive wastewater recycling program they call N-Water.
Which is a perfect example of red diamond adaptability. They built profound redundancy into the system.
Exactly. But they don't just let these 4 taps run blindly. The sources emphasize that Singapore recalibrates this massive system every single decade.
Every decade.
Yes. That is the reflect and learn stage happening on a macro civilizational scale. They assess rainfall patterns, population growth, technological advancements, and they adjust the funding for the next 10 years.
You know, to use a physical engineering metaphor, they didn't just build a rigid concrete block and hope the earth never shook.
Right.
They built a skyscraper with tuned mass dampers inside of it. You know those massive counterweights inside tall buildings that sway in the opposite direction of an earthquake or high winds to keep the building from snapping?
Oh, yes. That is an excellent way to visualize the physical environment triad interacting with politics.
Singapore's continuous assessment and funding recalibration act as that damper. They are absorbing the shocks of climate change and population growth before they fractured the system.
They didn't wait for a catastrophic drought to crush them. They aligned their internal planning rhythms with the harsh external rhythms of reality.
And what's fascinating here is how the sources frame environmental stewardship. In the Diamond framework, environmentalism is not framed as some sort of moral purity or ideological stand.
No, it is framed strictly as hard governance capacity.
Can you anticipate the physical limits of your world and build a system that actually respects them?
It totally shifts the conversation. Instead of saying, shame on us for taking too long in the shower, the conversation becomes, do we have the operational competence to recycle the water we use at scale?
Right. It removes the guilt and replaces it with engineering.
And the wildest part is, by turning the cycle so consistently, they forged a specific national character.
They took their biggest weakness, having no water, and turned the culture of seriousness around resource scarcity into their ultimate global competence. Singapore literally exports water technology to the world now.
We see a similar anticipatory cycle in the case study of Curitiba, Brazil, specifically looking at how they transformed their urban transport from the 1970s to the 2000s.
Curitiba is legendary in urban planning circles. And again, it starts with a deeply grounded past. In the 70s, Curitiba was growing rapidly, and they had massive traffic congestion.
Which is a standard problem.
Yeah, but the standard bureaucratic response would be to look at wealthy European cities and say, let's copy their underground subway systems.
Which would have been a disaster for them. It would have been financially impossible for their economics triad to sustain, and physically disastrous for their environment. It would have stalled in the gray diamond phase of avoidance forever.
Exactly. Instead, they defined their specific task based on their actual reality. They needed efficient, affordable, sustainable movement for the ordinary citizen, and they needed it cheap.
So they planned a bus rapid transit system, or BRT.
Dedicated bus lanes, those iconic glass tube stations where you pay before you board to speed up loading.
But the true genius was in the cycle itself. They didn't try to build the whole citywide system at once. They launched it in modular phases.
That's implementation.
Right. And then they did something basically unheard of for a municipal government in the 1970s. They instituted quarterly route adjustments based on user behavior.
Which raises a huge mechanical question. How do you track granular user behavior in the 1970s, before smartphones, before the internet, before digital transit cards?
Oh, they had to do it mechanically.
How did the assessment stage actually function?
They tracked turnstile spins at the tube stations. They monitored ticket sales by zone. They literally had transit workers physically counting passenger loads at peak hours on clipboards.
Wow.
It was incredibly labor-intensive, but they refused to skip the assessment stage.
And because they had that raw data, they could reflect and learn instantly.
Yeah.
Rather than pouring billions into static infrastructure that might be obsolete in 10 years, they built a dynamic system.
Exactly. If a specific route was overcrowded, they didn't commission a 3-year study. They just deployed articulated, high-capacity buses to that route the very next quarter.
If a neighborhood expanded, the bus lines expanded with it modularly.
And just like Singapore, This continuous cycle forged a specific character. It built an ethos in Curitiba of design for the ordinary citizen.
The cycle literally built the city's civic identity.
It proves that anticipation isn't just about avoiding disaster. It's about designing systems that are structurally flexible enough to evolve with human behavior as it happens.
Okay, so we've seen how this operating system can rebuild a decaying city, rescue a failing factory, and safeguard a nation's resources. But I want to pivot to a completely different sphere.
Okay, where to?
If the diamond can rebuild a city's transport system, how does it change the way we actually build human minds?
The education section.
Yes, the sources take a really unexpected turn here into education, and I think it affects anyone who has ever tried to learn a new skill or just felt let down by school.
This is arguably the most profound section of the text. It asks us to look at the very geometry of how we think about human development.
Geometry.
The sources argue that for over a century, our institutions, our schools, our corporate training, even our economic models have been trapped by the geometry of the pyramid.
Right. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or Bloom's taxonomy in education, or even just a standard corporate org chart.
A pyramid, by definition, assumes that value is scarce and that it only exists at the tiny point at the top.
Leaving a massive, wide, dependent base at the bottom.
Exactly. A pyramid implies that progress is a steep climb against gravity, and that mathematically most people will just never reach the peak.
In education, traditional Bloom's taxonomy put knowledge, which is basically just memorizing facts at the wide bottom, and evaluation, or synthesis, at the tiny point at the top.
It treats mastery as something reserved for a small elite who survive the climb.
But the sources propose tearing down the pyramid entirely and replacing it with the Bloom diamond.
Yes, the Bloom diamond. In the Bloom diamond, you don't climb. You put application directly in the center of a 2D plane.
Application is the center.
Application becomes the beating heart of the system. Around it, you have knowledge, comprehension, analysis, and synthesis.
So it turns learning from a ladder to be climbed into a cycle to be turned.
You acquire knowledge, you comprehend it, you apply it at the center, then you analyze what happened when you applied it, you synthesize a new approach, and you apply it again.
I love this analogy. It's like turning a ladder into a wheel. On a ladder, if you take a step and fall off, you're just at the bottom again. You failed. But on a wheel, you just cycle back to application and try again.
The momentum carries you. It completely removes the shame from making a mistake. The mistake isn't a failure. It is literally just data for the assess and reflect stages of the next turn.
The societal implications of this shift are massive, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. A diamond society is middle strong. By dismantling the pyramid, you stop treating competence as a scarce resource to be hoarded at the top, and you start distributing capability widely across the middle.
A society with a capable, resilient middle is infinitely more stable than a top-heavy pyramid.
Without a doubt.
Let's ground this, though. What does turning the ladder into a wheel actually look like in a real classroom? The sources give us the case study of Northbridge College.
Right, Northbridge. It was a secondary school suffering from everything we just talked about. Rote memorization, severe teacher burnout, kids who were totally disengaged.
They were trapped at the bottom of the pyramid.
So they applied the Bloom diamond. They started with the task. Instead of designing the curriculum forward from chapter 1 of a textbook, they used backwards design.
Meaning they started with the goal.
Right. They asked, what are the required capabilities a graduate actually needs in the real world? And built the task from there.
And they put application at the center. They implemented weekly project-based learning blocks across all subjects.
Instead of sitting quietly, passively receiving knowledge to regurgitate on a multiple-choice test on Friday, the kids were building things, solving problems, applying the concepts immediately.
That is the develop and implement stage right there.
But the real friction point, the place where schools usually fail, is in the assess and reflect stages.
How did Northbridge handle that?
Northbridge replaced heavy, punitive, high-stakes exams with integrated assessments and learning journals.
Break down what an integrated assessment actually is, because that sounds a bit like teacher jargon.
Fair enough. Instead of a student taking a standardized test on the laws of physics, they might be asked to build a small catapult to hit a target.
Okay, building it is the implementation.
Yes. And if the catapult misses, they don't get an F. The assessment is measuring how far it missed.
Oh, that's completely different.
Exactly. The reflection is the student writing in their journal, applying the physics formulas to explain why it missed and how they will adjust attention for the next try.
The reflection is the test.
It forces the student to turn the cycle themselves. And the result at Northbridge was exactly what the framework predicts.
Higher engagement, vastly improved real-world competence, and stronger teacher cohesion.
The school's character shifted from a culture of compliance to a culture of responsibility and craftsmanship.
Because they stopped trying to sort kids into winners and losers on a pyramid and started cycling them through the diamond until they built actual competence.
It is a deeply hopeful view of human potential. It suggests that if you fix the structure, the people will rise to the occasion.
It does make you feel like any broken system can be fixed. But, and this is we have to talk about the dark side of this framework.
You can't skip that.
We've seen the triumphs. What happens if you try to install this pristine 3D operating system onto a corrupted hard drive?
This is the most crucial part of the sources, because it proves the framework isn't just a magic wand. They provide a brutal cautionary tale.
A municipality called Riverton.
Riverton is the nightmare scenario, because on paper, Riverton looked like they were doing everything right.
They launched a strategic renewal cycle that looked exactly like the diamond, didn't they?
Yep. They had the task definition phase, they had quarterly planning, they had public-facing data dashboards. They were using all the right vocabulary.
But it resulted in a spectacular 8-year collapse and an absolute loss of public trust. Why did the machine explode?
Because they treated the diamond as a performance, not a reality. Let's look at exactly where the cycle broke down. First, the task and plan stages.
What happened there?
In 8 years, Riverton had 4 mayors and 3 city managers.
Oh, wow. So every time leadership changed, the new mayor wanted their own legacy, so they completely reset the priorities.
Exactly. There was zero continuity.
It's like the drive shaft of the engine was constantly being ripped out and replaced while the car was moving.
And without a stable task, you cannot have a stable plan. You can't secure funding or build capacity if the goal changes every 18 months.
But the fatal blow, the true corruption of the hard drive, happened in the assess and reflect stages, right?
Yes. The administrators actively politicized the data.
This part of the case study made me genuinely furious when I read it.
It's awful.
They had these public dashboards that were supposed to show accountability to the citizens. But when major infrastructure projects inevitably got delayed because of the constant leadership changes, senior administrators literally instructed their staff to reclassify the delayed projects as on track.
They omitted massive cost overruns. They published these glowing green dashboards showing 100% compliance.
And how did they legally get away with that?
By manipulating the metrics. They swapped outcome metrics for activity metrics.
Explain the difference between those two for us.
An outcome metric measures reality. Do we build a water treatment plant? An activity metric measures bureaucracy. Did we hold a meeting about the water treatment plant?
Oh my God.
Riverton's dashboard showed 100% compliance because they successfully held all their meetings and filed all their reports, even though nothing was actually being built.
They destroyed the integrity of the assessment stage.
And without honest assessment, reflection is impossible. You are just reflecting on a lie.
It's like someone buying an expensive fitness tracker and putting it on their dog.
Yes.
Sure, the dashboard on your phone says you ran 5 miles today, and you got your 10,000 steps, and you get the little digital fireworks on your screen. But the reality is, you are still sitting on the couch eating chips.
The dashboard is a complete fiction.
That is the perfect analogy. You can fool the dashboard, but you cannot fool your own arteries.
And because of that lie, Riverton's character and task stages broke completely. They had all these slogans about ethical leadership, but they offered zero protection for whistleblowers. And there were no consequences for the administrators manipulating the data.
The result was performative governance. The water treatment stalled out. The new housing rollouts were an unmitigated disaster.
The citizens experienced the brutal reality of the physical environment, traffic, broken pipes, housing shortages, which completely contradicted the glowing green dashboards the city was publishing.
What Riverton proves is the diamond's ultimate unbreakable rule. The framework does not guarantee success.
No, it reveals the structural requirements for success.
If you lack integrity, if you lack continuity, and, most importantly, if you lack honest assessment, the red diamond cannot exist.
Gravity takes over, and the system reverts entirely to the legacy gray diamond. The anxiety of the politicians leads to avoidance in the bureaucracy, which leads to physical accusations when the housing fails, which leads to total public apathy.
The framework didn't fail Riverton. Riverton failed the framework.
Exactly. You cannot fake the cycle. The physical environment and the social reality will always expose a corrupted process eventually.
Wow. Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've taken a massive journey today into these sources. We've seen how the diamond isn't just a corporate diagram, it acts as a literal 3D operating system for civilization.
The 8-stage cycle task: plan, develop, implement, assess, reflect, learn. Character is the core. And it anchors the real world, interlocking the spheres of politics, economics, the physical environment, and society.
And we saw that when it works, when you have continuity and honest assessment, like in Singapore's water strategy, or Curitiba's modular bus system, or Greenhaven's weekly 90-minute reviews, you get resilience.
You get the red diamond. You get an institution that anticipates the future and adapts to it.
But when it's performed without integrity, when the metrics are gamed and the leaders lack courage, like in Riverton, the whole thing collapses into the gray diamond of apathy and decay.
So as we wrap this up, what do you think is the ultimate takeaway here?
Well, I think it comes down to a thought straight from the core of the sources, something that upends how we usually think about leadership and human nature.
What's that?
We tend to believe that you need people of high moral character to build a good system. But the diamond framework suggests the exact opposite.
Character is not a prerequisite for action.
Right. Character is the result of honest cycles. You don't start with character. You forge it by committing to the process, by measuring reality honestly, by reflecting humbly, and by learning continuously.
That is incredibly powerful. You become what you practice. The structure dictates the soul.
So, to you listening right now, look at the institutions you interact with every single day. Look at your workplace, look at your local government, look at your kids' school.
Maybe even look at your own personal habits.
Exactly. If they seem to lack character or competence, if they feel like they are stuck in that grinding gray diamond of avoidance and accusation, don't just blame the people.
Don't just assume everyone is incompetent or lazy.
Right. Ask yourself, what feedback cycle is breaking here? What is this system secretly rewarding? Is the task unclear? Is the assessment a lie? You now have the blueprint to find out.
You know what the gears look like now. You can hear when they are grinding.
We've given you the tools to look under the hood. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. It's a lot to process, but once you see the diamond operating system, you start seeing it everywhere. Until next time, keep asking the hard questions and keep checking those feedback loops.